Hi, everyone.
Hello, folks. This subhead in Search of Christian Freedom is Concern for Truth. And Ray Franz begins it with, by all means use your judgment and hold on to whatever is good. That's 1 Thessalonians 5:21 in Phillips Modern English Translation. Ray goes on, faith and hope are inseparably linked to truth. Without it, they become mere credulity and illusion. The adulterating of the faith and hope taught in Scripture results in a consequent weakening of appreciation for the importance of truth within the spiritual paradise. It should be readily admitted that there are fine statements of Christian conduct to be found within the literature of the Watchtower organization, including articles praising and encouraging compassion, mercy, modesty, humble admission of mistakes, and similar heart qualities. It is simply that what is said so frequently is not what is done. To use the words of former Catholic theologian Charles Davis, in place of concern for truth and concern for people, there is concern for authority at the expense of truth. And this clearly has produced an impersonal and unfree system. Again, that's Charles Davis's phrase. Not that concern for truth and concern for people are completely absent, Ray says. It is rather that they are so severely subordinated to supposed organizational interests that they become expendable.
I know personally many very intelligent, perceptive persons, men and women, among Jehovah's Witnesses. I know that many of them, including certain members of the governing body, recognize quite a few of the serious errors in the organization's teachings and in their application. Yet these persons continue to uphold the organization as God's chosen instrument on earth. I believe that inevitably their intelligence, at least the exercise of it, suffers as a result, is blunted, stifled, and continually diverted into efforts at rationalizing away wrong. Some of them are capable writers, but they write always with the consciousness that what they write must conform to organizational creed, the particular spirit dominating at the time. They may write articles which are essentially healthful in content, yet as part of the whole and coming from the organizational source, these serve the ultimate purpose of enhancing the organization's stature in the minds of readers and promoting the submission to its authority which it seeks, thereby blinding or binding persons to a system. Among the men, most of them will accept assignments to give talks at assemblies, even if these contain statements and arguments that they themselves believe to be wrong. Their personal integrity suffers. They are acting a part, not being themselves, not being true to themselves.
Studies made of mass behavior and mind control, as during the Nazi regime, show that among the most powerful factors have been the altering and control of people's behavior, group conformity, and a virtual unquestioning obedience to authority, generally accompanied by control of information received. People naturally have a sense of personal identity through their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions or behavior. It has been found that if one of these elements is changed, the other two tend to change along with it. Thus, if a change can be effected in a person's behavior pattern, the person's thoughts and feelings will also generally change. For otherwise he feels an intolerable sense of discrepancy and conflict or dissonance within himself, when not only is there a channeling of his time into a restricted and constant program of specific activities, but also his entire behavioral pattern, his pattern of conduct, speech, and dealings with others is affected and altered. The person will feel an inner compulsion to adjust his thinking and his feelings or emotions to accommodate this change, in a sense to validate the new behavioral pattern. His view of himself, his set of values, may all be adjusted to conform to the changed behavioral pattern. If that pattern is an imposed one submitted to only because of a supposed superior authority, it may not only rob him of his freedom of action, it may also rob him of his freedom of thought and freedom of feeling.
When a person enters a highly scheduled program, such as, but not limited to, that of the Watchtower organization, he is made to feel that his very faithfulness to God is indicated by conformity to that program. It is not only the stress on a program of meetings and field service that exerts force. His behavior in speech, actions, attitude must all conform to a pattern. Witnesses in time become hypersensitive to any expression or remark that sounds even slightly deviant to the organizational norm. The person's behavior toward former friends and neighbors similarly is altered, since he is now expected to view them as worldlings and deals with them accordingly. He becomes subject to a whole host of regulations and policies involving his employment, his relationships with all the people with whom he has daily contact, even relatives who are not witnesses, his recreation, what he reads, and other facets of life. With such a drastic alteration of his previous conduct and behavior, there is the tendency to rationalize all else to make it harmonize with and justify the conformity called for. Only in this way can a relative peace of mind be obtained, though at a price.
This control of behavioral patterns is strong toward all witnesses, even though most live in their own homes as family members and engage in secular work. How much more does it exert power towards those who are part of institutional families, part of the headquarters staff with its thousands of members, or a branch office staffs, all living together in multiple dwelling buildings, eating together in large dining rooms, spending the majority of their waking and working hours surrounded by persons who are all conforming to the prescribed behavioral pattern. The subconscious inner compulsion to adjust one's thinking, outlook, sense of values, standards to fit the pattern is especially great for them. The dissonance they would otherwise experience would be intolerable. I feel that some of those I know personally are far more captive of their circumstances than they realize.
This tendency to make thoughts and feelings conform to a behavioral pattern seems to be at least one explanation why, when clear errors in organizational teachings or policies are pointed out to them, most witnesses will either refuse to acknowledge them or deny their importance.
When describing the process commonly used in mind control, one source, that's Stephen Hassan, Combating Cult Mind Control, by the way, one source states, quote, "Another key aspect of thought control involves training members to block out any information which is critical of the group. A person's typical defense mechanisms are twisted, so they defend the person's new, that is religious identity, against his old former identity. The first line of a defense includes denial, that is, what you say isn't happening at all, or rationalization. This is happening for a good reason. Justification. This is happening because it ought to be. And wishful thinking. I'd like it, that is the belief, to be true, so maybe it really is." Hassan goes on, "If information transmitted is perceived as an attack on either the leader, the doctrine of the group, a hostile wall goes up. Members are trained to disbelieve any criticism. Loyalty and devotion are the most highly respected emotions of all. People are not allowed to talk to each other about anything critical of the leader, doctrine, or organization. Members must spy on one another and report improper activities or comments to leaders. Most importantly, people are told to avoid contact with ex-members or critics." And that's the end of the Hassan quote.
Mm-hmm. The source quoted does not treat specifically of Jehovah's Witnesses, does not in fact even mention them, but the description fits them remarkably. Truth, in the biblical sense, is not merely intellectual or academic. It goes beyond simple concern for the factualness or fallaciousness of ideas and doctrines. It embraces not merely one's thinking, but one's actions, one's dealings with others, the influence one exercises on others. Concern for truth involves honesty in all these aspects. If we are dishonest with ourselves, refusing to face the hard facts of reality, we can hardly avoid becoming dishonest with others. I believe that is why those doing writing for the organization can allow themselves to present information that is not only not factual, but which, in many cases, is, in a sense, dishonest. It is no real proof of love of truth, then, simply to use it as an instrument to expose the fallacies in belief systems of others. The real test of our love of truth is when it exposes fallacies in our own belief system, and we not only accept it, but are grateful to be freed from the error. Great last line.
Yeah. So we'll put a link up to Stephen Hassan. We've dealt with, Ray has dealt with Stephen Hassan before in greater detail. So we'll put that link up on your screen to the earlier part of Ray's look at Hassan's book and application of it to the witnesses. And also maybe the outstanding book on the nature of propaganda. That's Jacques Ellul, also on your screen. And next time, the fruitage of love.